So now we've established what is happening in the Duchy of Burgundy, right? Lots of money, lots of trade, lots of status in artworks. We looked at a few artworks for Philip the Bold, the Duke of Burgundy, and I want you to keep this idea of the Burgundian court and the type of influence and wealth that is being established here in the 1400s, because it's going to be a key element of what we're going to look at and understand later. But now I want to turn our attention to Philip's brother. What? Charles V? No, we're not going to look at the king. We're going to look at the other duke, the other brother of Charles V. And we're going to look at how he helps to establish his duchy and his power and influence through artworks. The duke that we're going to be looking at is Duc de Berry. Now, the Duc de Berry, as I said, he is another brother of Charles V, but he is in charge of a smaller duchy, Berry, and he also controls Poitou and Auvergne. He himself is an avid collector of objects of art. He has lots of manuscripts. One would call him a bibliophile, like a big fan of books, right? And we're going to look at one of the books that he commissioned. So here it is. The artists of this book are the Limbourg brothers. The book is called Les Très Riches Heures de Duc de Berry, and it is an illuminated manuscript. So I know there's a lot going on in this slide. Let's just slow down, break it down. We're looking at the book by the Limbourg brothers. The Limbourg brothers, well, they were brothers. Their names were Paul, Herman, and Jean, and they were from the Netherlands, and they were nephews to one of the court artists of Philip the Bold. So you see again this connection between Philip, Charles, and their brother, the Duc de Berry. The Limbourg brothers, they trained in the Netherlands and in Paris, and then the Duc de Berry hired them to do this amazing manuscript. Technically, this is an illuminated manuscript, which is your vocabulary term. Illuminated manuscript, a luxurious handmade book with painted illustrations and decorations. So why don't we just call it book? No. It's so much more than that. First, illuminated, meaning that there are illustrations that illuminate or brighten these pages, this text. Also, it's handwritten. Manuscript, hand, script, writing. So handwritten, made, illuminated manuscript. The title of this illuminated manuscript is called Les Très Riches Heures de Duc de Berry. I don't want you to freak out and panic about all this French. It really is saying the extremely expensive Book of Hours for the Duc de Berry. Now we're going to get into the details of what a Book of Hours is and why this is called the Très Riches Heures and why is it about the Duc de Berry. But first, I want you to understand how expensive the making of an illuminated manuscript would be. So I'm going to include a video below which will walk us through the creation of a single manuscript. And I want you to think about all of the time and the energy, not just in the making of the book or the images, but the requirements of food and water and space for the animals that are used to create this, because this is made on vellum. Vellum is calf skin, so that means you have to have a calf to slaughter, and you have to have enough resources to then be able to kill this calf and not keep it for later use of food production. So much is going on here. I don't want to overwhelm you, so just watch the manuscript video below, and I want you to think about all of the people that are involved from the beginning to the end in making the manuscript. All of the material, all of the time, all of the resources to understand how expensive the making of one single simple manuscript would be. And then we're going to look at this manuscript, this illuminated manuscript for the Duc de Berry. So, as I said, the title, Les Très Riches Heures, it translates to the luxurious Book of Hours. Well, you might be wondering, well, what's a Book of Hours, Ms. Cortez? Great question. A Book of Hours is a small personal prayer book that became extremely popular during the late medieval period. And it is what it says. It is a book that tells you prayers that are connected with the hours of the day. So your morning prayers, your evening prayers. Additionally, a Book of Hours would have prayers for specific saints' days in connection with the religious calendar. There would be, at times, calendar markings and maybe certain liturgical, or I should say like religious readings for you to contemplate for specific occasions like life and death or marriage. That would be part of that. So it's a mixture of devotional prayers, psalms from the Bible, and then a connection to your daily life through this is what I say in the morning, this is what I say in the afternoon, this is what I say in the evening, and this is what is appropriate for a funeral, this is what's appropriate for a birth, that kind of a thing. So here we are looking at a Book of Hours for the Duc de Berry, and I've included here the folios, or the pages, that marked each month. So we have the 12 months of the year, and the Limbourg brothers have illuminated or illustrated each month with characteristic activities of that month. And the scenes are just absolutely fascinating. They alternate between scenes of the nobility and the peasantry. So here's January, and we see a New Year's Eve party happening in the court of the Duc de Berry. And then here's February. You can see it's snowy, it's cold, and we see the peasants warming themselves by a fire. And then let's look a little bit further down. Here we have June, where we see the reaping of the crops. And then where's another really good one? Here's a hunt of the nobility. The attention to detail that the Limbourg brothers puts into every page is absolutely fascinating. We, as historians, as costume historians, we will look to illuminated manuscripts such as the works by the Limbourg brothers to understand the construction of garments that have long deteriorated from the past. And so we could get into more like historical costume making with this, but we're not. Instead, we're going to look at a few pages, few of these month pages for the Book of Hours of the Duc de Berry. Here. This is our first page. So I've highlighted here to let you know this is the January folio. Folio is another word for a page in an illuminated manuscript. So we have the January folio, and we see the Duc de Berry, and he's in front of a table covered in food, and we see his elegantly dressed nobility hanging out at this party. Of course, there's always a person talking to a dog, right? And then above that, we have the constellations. The, where's my detail? There you go. What we see are the zodiac signs and the constellations that are associated with that month. Isn't that beautiful? So every month is going to have a different constellation, zodiac signs in the sky. Here's our detail showing us the Duke, brother to Charles V and Philip the Bold, and he's dressed to impress everyone. He's got this fur cap on, he's in front of a fire screen. Can I get a better detail up here? Okay. He's got this extremely expensive blue textile fabric with gold thread and this amazing gold collar here. You see his fur-lined cloak that he's wearing, and he's sitting in front of the fire. You see the fire burning in this massive fireplace. Look at this guy here warming his hands. by the fire, and everyone around them is dressed to impress as well. Everybody's got these elaborate lace work and chain work and details. Look at the tassels on this man's cap. Oh, he's cold. He's all bundled up, right? He's got his fur-lined sleeves. The people are enjoying big vats of wine and beer or mead, and then it is the dead of winter, and yet he has a feast, right? And he's got, of course, his little bougie dogs. And this guy here, I know some of you feel uncomfortable at a party, and so you'll just talk to the dog. Look at the woven mat underneath their feet, their colored stockings. I mean, it's just so amazingly beautiful. It's supposed to give you a sense of being at the court and being in the presence of the Duc de Berry. And this detail here, you can see that people are trying to talk to him, and his chamberlain, or the man in charge of the room, he's saying something. He's saying, approach, approach. He's telling the next person who wants to talk to the Duc de Berry that they can approach him and ask him or talk to him about the days. And, oh, cold weather we're having here, dude. I also want to call your attention to what's happening in the top corner, because it looks like there's a scene of a joust, right? We see horses, we see knights, but what's really going on is this is a painted canvas that has been pinned to the wall. So it is a temporary wallpaper. This temporary wallpaper, hand painted, keep in mind, shows this springtime scene of a joust, a tournament of knights. So we have to associate that with, knights in shining armor and nobility and honor and duty and justice and the macho-ness of running through and, catching the flowers of the fair maidens who adore you. This is all painted on a canvas that's then been pinned up in this party that's happening in the dead of January. So we have this extreme opulence and decadence of the Duc de Berry. Here, this is June from the same Très Riche Earls. And in the June, what we see are the peasant class. The peasants working the field outside of a very specific space. The Limburg brothers have given us a few details here. We see a river, and then we see a walled-in garden, and we see these buildings with this beautiful outcrop of a cross, a rose window. If we were the Duc de Berry, we would know exactly where we are. We are in Paris, and we're looking at our brother Charles V's palace. In fact, this building here is this building here. It's the Sainte-Chapelle. It's the chapel attached to the royal residence. Here's a map of Paris around the time that the Book of Hours is being made. And what we see here is the Seine River, which flows to the center of the city. And this island here, it's called the Ile de Cité, the island of the city. It's the oldest part of the city of Paris. And we zoom in. The corner of it, right here, is where there's a royal palace and a private chapel for the king. So when we look at the view in the Limburg brothers' Très Riche Earls, we see the fields that the peasants are working, and then we are looking across the river to the walled city, or the walled Ile de Cité, and we're looking at Sainte-Chapelle. So we know exactly where we are. We are standing on our brother's territory, our brother's land, which is a part of our land because we are brothers with him. And while you might think, what's the point of seeing this? Connect it to the vitality of France, the wealth, the resources, the management of the peasant class. And what the Duc de Berry is saying is, yeah, me, my brothers, we're awesome. We run France, and the peasants do the bidding of us. Our land is great. God loves us. This is an awesome place. I am so awesome. Here's another. This is October. In October, we see, after the harvesting of the fields, we see the planting of the seeds before the winter begins. So we see a man on a plow, we see a sower, and I love this detail here. You might think that that's a real person. No, that's a scarecrow that's dressed like an archer to keep away the birds. You can see the same kind of techniques that we keep out birds from eating our seeds in the fields. That's what's going on here. And then we see a river. On the other side, we see city dwellers who are on a promenade in front of another wall and another gigantic structure. If we were alive at this time, because this is our personal, private book of ours as the Duc de Berry, we would immediately recognize this as our brother's palace, the Louvre. This is Charles V's royal palace. What? Miss Cortez, you already said he had another palace. The French kings, they have multiple palaces within Paris and around France. Like, why wouldn't you? So yes, there's the one on the Ile de Cité, and then Charles has got the Louvre. The Louvre, as we know it today, doesn't look like this. It got a major renovation and facelift later. We're not going to talk about it now, but this is what it originally looked like. And so imagine you being the Duc de Berry and you open it and you see your brother's palace in Paris. And then you see the peasant class, and they are dutifully, happily going about their job, working the land for you, for your brother. Because I love maps, I just want to help you understand where we are now. So we were looking at Sainte-Chapelle before. Now we're in these fields over here, and we're looking across a small canal that ran along the wall in front of the Louvre as well. Okay, cool. But now let me ask you this question. What makes any of this proto-Renaissance? Any takers? Why would we call this proto-Renaissance? Because of the attention to highlights, midtones, and shadows. Do you see that here? Look at this. There is a sense of perspective, of depth, right? Okay. And then the naturalism of these figures. There is a weight to this man. I know, he looks a little odd, a little over it. But look at the attention that the Limburg brothers put into his stance, his movement of his knees, the proportion of the man and the horse. All of these elements, all of these factors bring in more natural elements to the space, the depth, the lighting. Look, we got a beautiful blue sky. Okay. So I know I put here early Northern Renaissance, but what I would really like to say is it's proto-Renaissance. And then finally, I want to ask you the question, as I have been kind of giving you the answer along the way, is what does this mean for the Duc de Berry? When you look at these individual panels, what does it say about him? What does it say about France? What does it say about his treatment of the peasant class? What does it say about his treatment of the nobility? What does it say about his devotion to the Christian faith? Now I'm curious, and I want to hear your answers to this in the discussion board.